The French expand the search for the terrorists still at large. At least one is said to have trained with al-Qaeda in Yemen. This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. As the manhunt continues for the perpetrators of the Paris terror massacre, France, the rest of Europe, and the U.S. confront a new reality where terrorism comes in smaller and harder to prevent waves. And administration critics are raising concerns tonight that the Obama administration may not be up to the new challenge. We have Fox team coverage. Howard Kurtz here in the Bureau with the media reaction to a story about dead journalists and free press. Ed Henry at the White House with renewed criticism of the Obama terror policy. But we begin with senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palkot live again tonight in Paris. Hi, Greg.
Brett, police tonight are focusing their attention to the north of this crime scene in the hope of capturing the terrorists whose vicious act is creating a national trauma.
Just one day after the brutal attack, which left 12 people dead and 4 critically injured, Paris grieves. And the authorities search. A massive manhunt intensified today for the main suspects in the killing. Brothers 32-year-old Sharif and 34-year-old Saeed Kouachi, both with reported terror links, had somehow recently operated under the police radar. No more. Their pictures have been distributed nationwide. That has prompted false alarms and false reports, but possible results as well. 2 people resembling the men were spotted at a gas station Thursday morning and then fleeing from their car some 40 miles northeast of Paris. That has triggered a big influx of police vehicles, helicopters and manpower, and a major door-to-door search. The other suspect, 18-year-old Hamid Murad, turned himself in overnight, claiming he was innocent. It's believed he could have driven the getaway car. This as Paris remains on edge. A policewoman dealing with a traffic accident was shot and killed by a gunman this morning. Authorities now reportedly say they don't think there's a link. Some 850 soldiers and police officers are being put into the mix to help protect religious sites, media offices, and police buildings. There is fear there could be another strike.
We salute that the French people gathered and were united yesterday and today, and there is this will to fight, to defend our liberties, democracy, and tolerance.
A national day of mourning was declared. Across Paris, all activity ceased, divisions for the moment forgotten. The Notre Dame Cathedral, the scene of contemplation and emotion. The scene of the attack was also filled with people. The Charlie Hebdo newspaper offices just down the street. The crowds, flowers, and candles grow, as well as concerns about how the attack could be used by all sides.
I'm a Muslim, so I'm really concerned in all the fact of they are using that as a kind of propaganda.
It's awful. There's no word to describe what's happened.
Emotions also felt by those around the world, including Americans living here.
It's horrific. It's not just an attack on freedom of speech. It's an attack on human beings, and we're all human beings.
One more note of defiance against the terrorists tonight. The targeted newspaper Charlie Hebdo announced it would come out with a new edition next week. The usual press run is 60,000. Next week, they'll come out with 1 million. Back to you, Brett.
Greg Palkot live just after midnight in Paris. Greg, thanks. President Obama's terrorism policy, his desire to close down the detention facility at Guantanamo Bay, and even the language he and his staff use are coming under renewed criticism tonight in the wake of the Paris attack. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has that part of the story and joins us live with some breaking news. Hi, Ed.
Good evening, Brett. That's right. Just in the last couple of moments, the president took his motorcade, unexpected visit to the French embassy here in Washington to pay his respects on a day in which he tried to keep the focus instead on his State of the Union address.
The day after the Paris terror attack, President Obama did not mention it as he tried to stay on message about the housing rebound in Arizona, where top advisor Valerie Jarrett tweeted a photo of the president posing with the state's former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords on the anniversary of the shooting that changed her own life. The president later joking about how Giffords' brother-in-law, an astronaut, is leaving on a long mission.
I know there's some folks in Washington who wish I was going to be in space for a year, but I'm still around. because I got some work to do.
A reference to the economic agenda he'll be touting at his upcoming State of the Union address. The Republicans today charged the president also needs to get to work on making the American homeland safer in the wake of the Paris attack. Senator Lindsey Graham declaring jihadists are trying to bring Paris-style attacks to America, and policies like releasing terrorists from Guantanamo get them closer to that goal.
When he left Iraq, he did so based on a campaign promise. He's trying to close Gitmo based on a campaign promise. His campaign promises are getting a lot of people killed.
White House aides were eager to counter that by noting aboard Air Force One on the way home, the president convened a call with top officials to review America's security posture, on top of what he said in the Oval Office shortly after the attack.
To hunt down and bring the perpetrators of this specific act to justice.
Republicans are also demanding to know why today in Phoenix, the president's motorcade literally drove past the Veterans Affairs Hospital at the center of last year's scandal. Pressed this week on why the president was not planning to make a stop, aides noted other top officials had already visited, and the administration has taken dozens of steps to turn the problem around.
Is he not going to visit the VA hospital in Phoenix that was the source of so much controversy and possible death?
Yeah, I haven't seen the president's full schedule yet, but I don't believe at this point that that's something that he's planning to do.
Republican Speaker John Boehner today said the commander-in-chief should have stopped in because the system is still broken.
And we call on the president to offer a long-term vision for reforming the systemic problems at the VA. We've yet to see it.
Now, on the terror front, the president is sending his Attorney General Eric Holder to Paris this weekend to meet with his European counterparts and stay on top of the threat. Brett?
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. The Paris attack sent a chill throughout the world's collective media establishment. Fox News media analyst and host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howard Kurtz, tonight on how the media cover the slaughter of some of their own.
The office of the satirical Paris newspaper Charlie Hebdo had already been firebombed when the editor talked about defying threats from extremists. It might sound a bit pompous to say so, Stéphane Charbonnier told Le Monde in 2012, but I'd rather die standing than live on my knees. Charbonnier was among 12 people shot to death by masked gunmen yesterday at the paper, which has a history of mocking Islam and other religions. While President Obama denounced what he called an attack on free speech, a debate erupted over just how the killers should be described.
There's a long history of this White House being very, very reluctant to talk about terrorism, to call something terrorism, but they pretty quickly called it terrorism because it was so obviously terrorism. What they haven't done is called Islamic terrorism.
I stopped calling these people Muslim terrorists. They're about as Muslim as I am. I mean, they have no respect for anybody else's life. That's not what the Quran says.
And on this day, these activists found their targets, and their targets were journalists.
Activists? CNN's Christiane Amanpour was picking up on a word that Charlie Hebdo's editor had used, but terrorists, jihadists, or murderers seems more appropriate. The other debate is whether news organizations, in a gesture of solidarity, should run the cartoons that many Muslims found offensive. At the moment, Fox News, NBC, CNN, and other outlets are not doing so. An Associated Press spokesman says its long-standing policy is to, quote, refrain from moving deliberately provocative images. But the Washington Post published one of the Muhammad cartoons today. The massacre is an unfortunate reminder that killing journalists has become a surefire way for Islamic terrorists to generate global publicity, as ISIS demonstrated when it released videos of the beheading of reporters James Foley and Steve Sotloff.
One consensus seems clear. The armed assault on that Paris newspaper was an attack on all of journalism. That's why it's encouraging that Google and French media companies have put up the money so that Charlie Hebdo, rather than being silenced, will indeed publish next week. Brett?
Howie, thanks. Up next, the new Republican Congress makes its first move against Obamacare. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox CT in Hartford, Connecticut, where the state Supreme Court rules a 17-year-old who wants to stop getting chemotherapy must continue the treatments. The girl, known as Cassandra C., was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma in September. Fox 5 in San Diego, where it's not snakes on a plane, but snake in a toilet. A 5-foot Colombian rainbow constrictor was found in the toilet at a downtown marketing firm. One of the bosses there says the snake apparently belongs to another tenant in the building. Yikes. And this is a live look at Eden Prairie, Minnesota from Fox 9 in the Twin Cities. The big story there tonight, a delay in the unveiling of what is billed as the world's first Budweiser smart vending machine. It was supposed to go into service for tonight's hockey game between the Minnesota Wild and the Chicago Blackhawks, but a team spokesman says there are additional logistics to be worked out, so patrons will just have to get their beer the old-fashioned way. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.